with the housing crisis, homelessness and possible solutions a central part of the election campaign, as we've already heard this evening. We've been looking at emergency housing at length on Checkpoint, but it's most often been in Auckland. Tonight we go to tenants at a new emergency housing facility in Northland who say they're paying $107 a week to live in concrete rooms with no carpet, insulation or hot water. Now, the Whangaroa Harbour Holiday Park was purchased by the Te Runanga o Whaingaroa in June and for the past month has been run as an emergency housing facility. A fortnight ago, Kaeo Primary School principal Paul Barker told Checkpoint children from the facility had begun to enrol without warning and he'd been given no extra funding from the Ministry of Education to provide for them. You may have heard that interview. We've been asking the Runanga ever since if we could visit the holiday park to see the facilities and for an interview with its chief executive, Toa Whaniva, who said we wouldn't be welcome until a formal opening next month. But given people are already living there and given MSD is already referring people there, what's it like now? Here's Zach Fleming with our cameraman Bradley White in Kaeo.
The front gate was open when we got there, but our reception was anything but welcoming.
At the moment, he's not allowed here.
Okay, how come?
Because
Can we just go around and have a couple chats to people? Maybe
No.
your dad might be back when we get here?
that is not possible.
Within minutes of arriving at the Whangaroa Harbour Holiday Park, about 6 kilometres north of Kaeo in the far north, a young girl claiming to be the manager's daughter tells us we have to leave. Te Runanga o Whangaroa, based in Kaeo, bought this former campground on June the 30th for $775,000 and reopened it last month as an emergency housing village. It has a 3-year contract with the Ministry of Social Development to provide transitional housing, and criticism has come quickly. Kaeo Primary School Principal Paul Barker says he first learned the holiday park had become an emergency housing facility when 5 children from the campground turned up unannounced to enrol at his school. He's concerned WINZ and health services are both a 40-minute drive away.
The reality is that yes, the resources are stretched here. We fit as one of the top towns in terms of deprivation on both the latest survey from Auckland University and from the survey from Dunedin University a couple of years ago, and it feels as though the already stretched resources in Kaeo are just becoming even more stretched.
After Checkpoint was asked to leave the holiday park, we found 3 women across the road who are current residents. 21-year-old is one of around 40 people living there. The majority are school-aged children.
The whānau is all good around here. The people that have moved in is mean. They're cool guys to hang out with.
How's the place itself?
It's all right, but it wasn't what I was expecting. But it's all good. I mean, not really.
Described Runanga staff as awesome, but said the accommodation wasn't ideal and the place was run down. She told us she pays $107 a week for a 1-bedroom concrete unit with bare walls and floor. She said the room has no carpet and was cold at night, there was no hot water in her room, and residents shared camp-style communal bathroom and kitchen facilities. The holiday park has been home for the past month.
This would have been a lot better if they had been a bit more prepared before they moved any of the tenants in.
Several other campground residents were too afraid to speak on camera, but told me their rooms are cold and mouldy with no drinkable running water.
Kaeo is a blink and you miss it type town, just 20 minutes north of Kirikiri on the east coast. Not that many tourists pass through here, and the ones that do have little reason to stop. On the main strip there are the normal things, a petrol station, an RSA, a Foursquare, but just a handful of shops. In the 2013 census, just 453 people said they lived here, and that was an 8% decrease on the 2006 census. And that's not to say that Kaeo is not a nice place to live, but it paints a picture of a town that's on the decline and not the rise. There are few opportunities here, but this is where people who are in desperate need of emergency housing are being sent to try and restart their lives.
We first requested an interview with Te Runanga o Whangaroa Chief Executive Toa Whaniva on August the 17th. Last week we told him we would be visiting Kaeo for this story and requested an interview. Mr Whaniva declined to be interviewed either at the holiday park where he was concerned about the residents' privacy or in Kaeo, so we visited the Runanga's office in the town to see if anyone else was available.
I'm Zach from Radio New Zealand, the Checkpoint program.
Hi, Zach.
So you're the person to speak to about the holiday park up the road?
No, there's nobody here that can speak to you about that. They've already made a media release. They've done a media release,
Okay.
and that's...
Okay, so why is there no one here that can speak to me? Because I just went to the holiday park and they told me that there's no one there I can speak to either and to come here.
We have already made a media release.
Okay. So
No, sorry.
you're not prepared to talk about it? Because I've been there and they say that there's no carpet, no drinkable water. Are you really just going to walk away?
I have answered your question.
Not really.
We have made a media release, and that's it. Could you please leave the premises?
That media release included a general fact sheet about transitional housing and a statement which said the Runanga was committed to transitional housing in Kaeo for people in need for up to 12 weeks. It said it provides wraparound support for all residents. The 13-hectare campground has 14 rooms and tent sites and operated as a holiday park for more than 30 years until it was purchased by the Runanga. A review by a guest just 4 months ago, before the Runanga purchased it, described the park as not suitable for young people. Josie Apiata said her unit was worse than a prison cell. Other reviews described it as old, run down and in a state of neglect. Kaeo resident Kane Rifi said he stayed at the campground for a week 4 years ago.
What was it like?
Oh, yeah, no, it wasn't that good really.
Can you elaborate? What do you mean?
Oh, just the feeling, it's concrete floors, concrete walls, it's, you're not really looking at anything. Just the quality of the place actually was there. It was like, being forgotten about,
Suitable place for a family, you would say?
Nah, not really. Nah, not long term.
Since 2008, the campground's capital value, so the value of its buildings, not land, has halved from more than $1.4 million to just over $700,000. After learning we visited the campground, Chief Executive of the Runanga, Toa Whaneva, called to express his frustration that Checkpoint had visited and residents had chosen to speak to us. Asked about the state of the rooms, Mr. Whaneva says there has always been running drinkable water. He says the group of tenants that claimed they were having to drink bottled water are wrong, and the Runanga recently replaced the campground's water filter after a complaint from one tenant. I asked him if there is carpet and if the rooms are warm.
So we have access all the tenants for heating, so we did install heating for them. This is not the Sheraton, and most homes in New Zealand don't have carpet.
So you think it's acceptable for people to live in a room that's a concrete floor? That's healthy?
Like I said, most homes in New Zealand don't have carpet, and this is not the Sheraton. When every tenant comes through, we provide them with a bedding package. We make sure that they're safe, warm and dry. That is what we're providing. We've only purchased this complex in the last month, and we are still working through how we can improve on what we currently have.
Do you think that you should have got it up to a higher standard before you tried to open it to these families?
We're working on getting the Wānanga room sorted, which was our priority in terms of getting services supported. We did also renovate and sort out all the units in terms of making sure that they were warm and dry and secure. We provided the bedding packages, as I said, for the families. We made sure the infrastructure was right. We installed new stoves in the dining room to make sure that those were working. It's winter, and we're not going to have families in tents or living in the backs of cars when we have a complex that we can get up and running.
So what about the Ministry of Social Development, which has a contract with the Runanga? Did it do its due diligence before it allowed the campground to be converted to an emergency housing facility?
It refused our request for an interview but sent us a statement a short time ago saying the campground is safe and warm, meets council standards and has been assessed by the Ministry as meeting contractual standards. The Ministry's Deputy Chief Executive Scott Gallagher says the units have oil-fin heating, warm bedding, floor rugs, kitchenettes and televisions. He said teething problems have been dealt with swiftly, and in recent days while a water problem was sorted out, 20-litre containers of water were available to tenants as an added precaution. Mr Gallagher said further work is planned at the campground and relationships with local schools is the responsibility of the Runanga.
And what about the Ministry of Education? Kaeo Primary is a Decile 1 school. Principal Paul Barker says he's had no contact from the ministry about his new unexpected students.
I would have thought that someone from either MSD, the local runanga, or the Ministry of Education would have got in touch with me to say what they could do to assist us. But no, I haven't heard from anybody at all.
So he wrote to the Ministry of Education.
And they replied to me to say that they acknowledged the concerns, but they weren't sure what, if anything, they could do about it. I would love for someone to be able to say, well, this is a special circumstance. Here's some money to go buy some desks and some chairs for these kids. I did make that inquiry today, but it doesn't seem like that's an option.
Why, have they said no? Or?
Yes. Yeah, they have. They said that there's no money for that.
We contacted the Ministry of Education yesterday morning. They refused our request for an interview and did not provide a statement in time for the story's airing.
Runanga CEO Toa Whaneva was unsure how many people are living at the campground, but says overall he thinks the rooms are acceptable. Are you happy with the state of the rooms? Can you give me a yes or a no answer?
Very happy, yep.
Would you live there yourself?
I would.
Government targets say families shouldn't be at the campground for longer than 3 months. By then, they should have a permanent home to move into. But 17-year-old says the Ministry of Social Development has told her family they can stay longer.
If we can't find a house, well then we can just sign up again to stay here.
Because there aren't enough homes in New Zealand. For Checkpoint, Zach Fleming.
And in the past hour, the Ministry of Education has provided us with a statement saying it will help Kaeo Primary School put through an application for special funding, offer learning support services, and its regional staff will meet with the Ministry of Social Development staff to work out a plan for families with children at the park who aren't attending school. That statement just in from the Ministry of Education.